Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 2000's Represent. We're starting out our cycle of 2005 with an album. In this episode, we're talking about Bleed Like Me by Garbage. So, obviously, this was their fourth studio album, the album that came out before they took, I believe, a 7-year hiatus from 2005 roughly to 2012. I think they got back together a little bit before that to do like a couple like singles or something. But yeah, this was the album that kind of broke up the band. Very luckily, only temporarily, even though it was a 7-year gap. So, and this one is kind of regarded as not one of their best albums. I will say that, and I do generally agree with those reviews. I don't know where I rank it necessarily. I don't know if I put it at the very bottom, but it's kind of and when I say least favorite, I still actually really like it. I just like it much less than say like version 2.0, which is like a perfect album in my opinion. I like it less than their debut. A little bit less than Beautiful Garbage. I might like it maybe a little bit more than Not Your Kind of People. Think I probably like it less than Strange Little Birds. Definitely like it less than what was the one that No Gods, No Masters, and Let All That Imagine Become the Light. Their newest one is also really good. So this one is maybe like near the bottom, but I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way. I absolutely still really enjoy the album, just not as much as some of their others. Before we get into the full part of the video, when this was released finally on vinyl in 2024, I picked up obviously the CD of it. Which I already had a CD, but this is like expanded with some extra stuff. I also finally picked up the vinyl of this as well, and this actually completed up to the most recent album, completed my Garbage vinyl collection because for some reason or another, this album was never issued on vinyl back when it was new in 2005. I think like everything else, so for a while, like a long time, I had this gap in my Garbage collection. I mean, this gap with this album, just potentially waiting for a reissue. And with starting in 2015, they started reissuing their earlier albums on vinyl. I think under their Stun Volume label, which I think they started in 2012 with Not Your Kind of People. I think was the first major album on that label or that imprint, whatever it was. Yeah, so in 2012, I started collecting all the Garbage vinyls I could. Picked up in order. The order I got them in, I think, was picked up version 2.0. Then got a lot of these were like imported. So version 2.0 I imported from Japan. Um, their Then I think the next one I got was Beautiful Garbage. Imported that from the UK. Got their debut from the UK. Had already purchased Not Your Kind of People, and then as new albums came out, I just bought them when they were new. I remember posting on social media about my Garbage collection, and Shirley Manson actually responding to it, asking me, and this is before my collection was complete, asking where the Bleed Like Me vinyl was, and I kind of had to like respond and be like, well, I would have it, but unfortunately it was like never issued on vinyl right away. So I think they actually released this a little bit early. So this year is the 25th anniversary of, the 20th anniversary of this album, and they usually were doing these releases in 20th anniversary intervals. So 2015 we got debut, or we just got their self-titled. In 2015, 2018 we got version 2.0. 2021 we got the re-release of Beautiful Garbage, and then I think they kind of just wanted to get this project done, so they actually released this in 2024. But I'm really glad to have that collection completed. So that was like a huge thing. It was just like there was this gap for a while, just waiting for this re-release to happen, or not even a re-release on vinyl. This is the first time it's been offered on vinyl. But anyway, I got my notes here. We're gonna get through our notes, and then we'll get through our track list and all that as well. All right, so here we have "Bleed Like Me" by Garbage First released April 11th, 2005. I remember picking it up shortly after it came out. This is, again, their fourth studio album, and kind of led to, there was a lot of issues with the band, like interpersonal issues, them not being able to agree on stuff and so on, which they even briefly broke up for a while during the production of this record. They obviously got back together, and then kind of after this album came out, after they did their tour for the album, they took their 7-year hiatus and then came back in 2012 with Not Your Kind of People. So really glad they got back together, because during this initial run of them being together, from, it was like 10 years, 95 to 2005, I never got to go to a Garbage concert until 2012 when they reunited. Like I said, so it briefly broke up. Apparently the recording, though, on the album, I think they wrote Right Between the Eyes like in like 30 minutes, and that kind of gave them this kind of optimistic outlook on the album, which was quickly dashed. Like, production started off really strong, but then they just ran into a bunch of issues that kind of snowballed into them splitting up. I think splitting up in October of 2003, and then a few months later, it wasn't like a permanent split up. They reunited a few months later to finish the album. But so what happened was they wanted it done in 6 months, and it started off smoothly, but then a bunch of stuff happened. So Shirley, I think, had some vocal cord surgery. Apparently, a backhoe backed into their recording studio. This is Smart Studios in Madison. So that obviously delayed things. Shirley apparently also got writer's block during this time period. And then in October, there are also just a bunch of like passive aggressive issues between the different band members. And then in October, the band ended up taking a 4-month kind of hiatus. I have a couple quotes here from one is from Butch Vig and the other is from Duke Erickson about the kind of troubled recording on this album. So let me just bring this note thing up here. So Butch Vig was saying, was quoted as saying, quote, "There were a lot of personal arguments and we couldn't agree on songs." And then Duke Erickson was quoted as saying, and was basically just kind of mirroring what Butch Vig was talking about. He says, quote, "When you lose that common bond of the music, you've got nothing." And then another quote, "Eventually the group suffered a complete and utter band meltdown, which then, led to that hiatus." All right, back to the notes. So they kind of did their own thing for a while. I think Butch Vig ended up getting some renewed hope when I think he visited LA, and a bunch of Garbage fans were talking to him, and he gave them some of the names of some of the songs. But then kind of seeing those fans, he's like, okay, we maybe still have a future with this band, so it's probably worth like salvaging and getting this album out. And that's also when he started talking to Dave Grohl about drumming on Bad Boyfriend. I don't think Dave Grohl was initially credited on the song, but I think it came out years later that he was actually the drummer on that track. So met up with Dave Grohl, got him the drum on that one song, and obviously there is history between Butch Vig and Dave Grohl, going back to Butch Vig producing Nirvana's Nevermind, and then eventually, obviously, Dave Grohl working on this album, at least Bad Boyfriend, and then Butch Vig producing, I think 2 of the Foo Fighters albums with Wasting Light and Sonic Highway. So there is like history between the 2 of them. So they got together there. And they were also saying Dave Grohl kind of brought like a whole kind of like raw energy to the recording, which kind of influenced the way the rest of the album came together, because it ends up being much more rock focused than their previous album. And their previous album, Beautiful Garbage, was actually kind of stripped back as well, off of, I think, like their most production heavy album is definitely version 2.0, with like a lot of like overdubs and like effects, much more electronic focused. Beautiful Garbage, I think, scaled that back to be more rock focused, and then they even scaled it back further with this album. And they said that they kind of wanted the album to kind of mirror how their live shows play. So basically, probably like simpler production overall, and it definitely is more rock focused than some of their previous albums. So I definitely see how it worked out there. In early 2004 is when they regrouped. They actually, I think for the first time, went with an outside producer because usually Butch Vig is like a production like genius usually. So he's obviously produced stuff for Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, a whole bunch of other bands, and Garbage, of course. But they ended up going with John King, I think is the name. Let me actually just bring up the production credits here. Make sure I just wrote that name down. Yeah, John King. So they brought in John King as their producer, and I think their label had suggested that they maybe get an outside perspective on production, and maybe like if the band members couldn't agree on something, this other producer would be able to kind of at least get them focused on making something instead of just constantly arguing about the direction of like songs and things like that. So they brought in that producer. Shirley went to say they basically there was only so much that John King could do because if Garbage was still not really talking to each other, they weren't really going to be able to get anything done. So the band eventually ended up working out their personal issues and then ended up getting back to work under this new producer. Um, the album, like I can close the notebook now. The album came out to kind of mixed reviews. Yeah, it's definitely kind of seen, at least in their initial four albums, if you count them as like their first like 10 years. It's definitely the weakest of those first four because in 1995 they put out their self-titled album, which was just incredible. Then they blow that out of the water, in my opinion, with version 2.0. They kind of cool off a little bit with Beautiful Garbage, even though I still really like Beautiful Garbage. And then this one comes out to like kind of like a troubled production, and it just doesn't isn't as well received as some of their other albums. I will say though, the kind of style that like if you watch like concert video of this particular tour, I think like some of the dresses and the hairstyle of Shirley Manson is like just on point for this particular like era, if you want to call it that. We're gonna jump into our reviews and then get into our track list. Let me just pull this up here. Let's see here. And again, like I said, came out to kind of mixed reviews overall. Metacritic has it at a 56 out of 100. AllMusic gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Entertainment Weekly has it at a B plus. The Guardian has it at a 3 out of 5. Kerrang gave it a 4 out of 5. Pop Matters only gave it a 4 out of 10. Rolling Stone 3.5 out of 5. Slant Magazine has it at a 3.5 out of 5. A 3 out of 4 from USA Today. And the final one is Yahoo Music gave it a 6 out of 10. So kind of middle of the road. Some okay reviews, some not so good ones. And now we're going to get into our track list here. Album comes in at about 45 minutes in length. That's just the studio version, not including the like any kind of bonus tracks or anything like that. Yeah, so 45, like basically 45 minutes with 11 tracks. Track one is Bad Boyfriend, and one review actually was saying like the initial run of like the first half of the album or first few songs are just really good. It's like some of their best runs on any kind of album where one track is great, the next track is great, the next track is great. But then kind of toward the end of the album, it kind of starts falling apart a little bit. Kind of agree there, but anyway, again, let's go back to the track list. So track one is Bad Boyfriend. That's the one that Dave Grohl drums on. Track two is Run Baby Run. Actually, really like that one as well. Track three is Right Between the Eyes. Track four, probably just the most well-known track on the album is Why Do You Love Me? That actually has a really cool music video as well. And then you get into the title track with track 5 with Bleed Like Me. After that, you move into track 6 with Metal Heart. After that, track 7 is Sex Is Not the Enemy. That was actually like pretty solid as well. After that, we go into track 8 with It's All Over But the Crying. Then track 9 is Boys Wanna Fight. Boys Wanna Fight isn't a great song, but it's got like a really kind of like catchy like hook. It's like the boys wanna fight, girls are happy to dance all night. It's not a great song, but that like chorus is actually kind of fun. So that's track 9. Track 10 is Why Don't You Come Over, and then we end up with track 11 with Happy Home. Again, 11 tracks, basically 45 minutes in length. I'll say like Bad Boyfriend is a solid track. Run Baby Run is good. Right Between the Eyes is good. Why Do You Love Me is pretty good. And then Sex Is Not the Enemy is probably pretty good as well. My favorite one on the album is either I really like Run Baby Run and Why Do You Love Me is great. Probably Why Do You Love Me is probably my favorite track on the album. If I had to pick just one. But yeah, that was again album that kind of unfortunately caused them to go on a 7 year hiatus. So it's kind of I think there's been a turnaround on it recently. I think more people are kind of listening to it and actually kind of like enjoying it for what it is. If you just listen to what it is without comparing it to their other work, I think it's a pretty solid album. But it kind of definitely does pale in comparison to something like their debut or version 2.0 or even some of their newer stuff like No Gods, No Masters. So it kind of I think is reviewed fairly, but I'm a huge Garbage fan, so I'm never going to like say like I don't enjoy listening to this album. I actually absolutely have a blast whenever I listen to it, and listened to it again fairly recently. But yeah, that is going to do it for this video. We'll be back again in a few, or not about to say a few days, but in a week, covering a 2005 movie. Week after that, we'll be doing a 2005 video game before doing 2006 and the rest of the decade. Once we get to the end of this cycle, if we decide to continue doing this series, we'll probably take like a short break or something like that. But we'll still have obviously the 90s series going and what have you. So that should do it for now. So again, thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.